Hello, everyone. Really excited to have everyone join today. Very also happy to have with me Divya, my colleague, and our head of AI at Dexory. We're here to touch on a pretty important topic that has been, I think, at the core of everything that we've been doing for probably the past 3 years, which is AI within the logistics and supply chain altogether. We've had questions ongoing, I think, for the past couple of years, every time we talk to our customers and to the industry about AI. But before Christmas, we actually reached out to a lot of our customers, but also on social media, to try and understand what are the most burning questions from our audience. And here we are together, kind of summarizing some of those key questions and sharing some of the kind of thoughts and opinions and pretty much kind of the knowledge that we have at Dexory about this particular topic, which I know is top of mind for many. Yeah, we're going to have a conversation, but if you do have questions about it, please feel free to add them in. We'll come back to you at the end of this, or just kind of follow up afterwards if we need to take that away. Yeah, with that in mind, we could probably kick it off. Yeah. Divya, I think, I tend to talk obviously to customers a lot. Yeah. One of the first questions that we were having is, where do we actually see warehouses losing a lot of value today? Obviously in the context of how can AI help? Yeah. And I can probably start a little bit by talking about some of the biggest inefficiencies that I personally see in our sales team sees, and our customer success team sees with users all across the world. And I think one of the key areas we're seeing, there's obviously a lot of activity happening inside warehouses that could be automated, which is like one of the first things we do here at Dexory is kind of try and take some of the repetitive tasks away. But there seems to also be a big element around wasted time in walking inside warehouses, which is kind of people going to obviously pick things or look for things or kind of ensure that things are compliant. So obviously there's a lot of kind of backwards and forwards when it comes to physically walking inside the warehouse that could be saved, and a lot of resources are wasted there. But then there comes like a whole element around what other resources people are struggling with. So people is one element, but then space is a very big one as well. So we're hearing a lot from our customers on how could they actually make their whole kind of space allocation better and staying on top of that, using machinery in the right way. So obviously, like, if going back to my point on walking, if it's not walking, there's like how much we actually kind of use forklifts to go backwards and forwards in a warehouse when you probably shouldn't have to do that trip. And it's not just necessarily obviously the energy or the fuel of it, but it's just kind of that machinery could be used somewhere else. So I think overall, the whole theme is inefficiency. But I'm sure that from your angle, kind of coming with the AI in mind, like you might have something else to add there.
Yes, all of those are absolutely valid points, and we do see a lot of changes. Like for a person working in a warehouse over the period of time, fatigue comes in and efficiencies kind of go down. But one of the things from my perspective, which are I think from a machine learning and AI perspective are very important, is the whole aspect of data decay. So once something gets scanned, like even if it's manually getting scanned, etc., the moment it gets scanned, that information starts to get older and stale, right? So one of the biggest values for customers who use Dexory as a platform is we are constantly scanning the warehouses and are providing a real-time stream of incoming data. So we're keeping that digital twin of your warehouse as accurate to real time as possible. And that's how we bridge that gap and avoid data decays, because data decay also means that your platform, which is your analytics platform or something, using stale data is hallucinating, right? So how do you avoid that? And that is through using our platform and having a real-time stream of data. So I think that's a really important one for me.
And I think it's a kind of a good segue towards one of the second questions that we had on LinkedIn is how can AI actually help prevent stockouts, overstocking or write-offs, which kind of are also some kind of big inefficiency drivers within warehouses, going back to our first question. So I think there's a big element in what you were saying around that data decay and kind of the timely data that kind of leads to that need to overstock and to always kind of have more than you probably need. So yeah, I was just wondering from your perspective, how do you see that element of like not having that real-time data then impacting the overall kind of stock element within a warehouse?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think when it comes to like stockouts and things like which are slightly unpredictable or new things that are happening or an anomaly sort of a thing, I think one of the things that helps is like when you are scanning every day and you are collecting all of that data and you have a historical data set of how things have moved and happened in your warehouse, we can from an AI perspective we use that for all sorts of trend analysis and predictive analytics, which can help us forecast things like during this time of the year, there's be a peak demand for this other item. So we are able to predict that for you. But more foundationally, this is not magic. This is not just algorithm. It's also really rigorous and disciplined feature engineering. So using the data that we are collecting, we use this to build the right kind of features so that it, when fed into a particular machine learning model, it gives you the right kind of reliable insights. So I think that's one way I see our platform really helping customers. So yeah.
No, perfect. And I think there's a big element to what you're saying there around. There's a visibility element, but also that visibility allows a more kind of in the moment reaction.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a big kind of focus on, there's always been trends within logistics and supply chain, right? So within those trends, I think there's that thinking of course we know what's going to sell in the peak season because it happens every year. But what you don't necessarily capture is those shifts from one day to another, sometimes even from 1 hour to another, which to an extent you can be efficient seasonally, but it's no longer just about what you do on a seasonal basis or like on a 3 to 6 month basis. It's about like how do you react in the moment to a change that you're seeing, whether that's from your customers or from the internal stock or how people are moving, how goods are moving within the warehouse. So I think from our perspective, I think in a lot of the conversations is kind of moving from that kind of trend historical thinking to like the most adaptive way that you can have the warehouse evolving. So
that's a fair point. And because we are collecting that data almost every day, we have insight into what's happening tomorrow, like new stock coming in or whatever. Depending on how much of that information we have, we should be able to be very precise in terms of every day, like you said. So yeah, definitely.
Perfect. I think maybe turning it around in a different way, and kind of our third question from the audience is, where do we actually see companies get AI wrong in the warehouse? And how should they rethink it? I could probably just start with a quick one, which is because it's such a big buzzword, everyone wants to adopt and bring AI in. But I think there's actually kind of massive directives from the boards of our customers around like, what are you going to do about AI this year? Like, what's coming? But without actually really understanding what's going to be the impact and the value brought into day-to-day operations. And also sometimes the AI team or the innovation team works very much in isolation from the proper operations. So the one thing we try a lot to make sure that customers do is that they don't just kind of try and isolate and like proof of concept and do something very small, but that then doesn't kind of link back into operations or doesn't scale into operations. So we always tell customers you have to start with a problem, and then kind of think, is AI the right solution?
100%.
What else do you see that they're doing maybe wrong in their approach there?
And this is such a good point around the right problem and the right solution for it, because even in my past experience, outside of the warehouse, in any industry that we have tried to implement AI solutions, it's always been a case like, are you sure this is AI is the solution that you need for this problem? Maybe something else would solve it. Like always the right, the right problem and the right solution, and that pairing really matters. But I think specifically in our industry, one of the things I've seen is the data itself. If we try to like stamp AI onto broken processes or broken data pipelines, if we haven't really understood and ensured that our foundation in terms of data and MLOps, etc., isn't there, and then we want to do AI of all kinds, of all sizes, then that's more likely to fail than succeed. So the only thing, and even at Dexory, what we really invest in is making sure that our foundations are really strong and it can scale, and that would enable the scaling. So I think not using AI is not what I'm saying. I'm saying always make sure that you have the right foundation before you step onto the innovation side of things. And because once you have that foundation, everything comes naturally, and it's going to be much easier to innovate when you know where your data sits, how you are going to ingest it, how you're going to process it, and all of that. So.
Yeah, and I think just as you were talking, because you mentioned something about AI for everything, I think that there's also like a misconception, kind of go to the other side of the spectrum, whereas people expect AI has to be able to do everything. Like to your point earlier, like it's just magic, right? It should work in any condition, and there's obviously still a lot of limitation for AI within the real world, and there are some requirements for technology to be able to provide good results, right? So of course it goes back to the quality of the data, but there's also some elements of hygiene and just ensuring that 100%. Obviously, again, the expectation is like from the stuff that you see in the media or on like all the kind of buzz again around the capabilities, people just expect that they'll push a button and things will just work magically. But obviously what we're seeing is there has to kind of be a two-way piece of work, just ensuring that there are some requirements respected in the warehouses to be able to then make the most of the technology. Perfect. I think maybe one that I could probably touch on a little bit on what we're seeing is what are the fastest wins warehouses see with AI power visibility. So I was going to say like one of the elements that you could do is kind of actually go back to some of the white papers we put out, and there's a lot of case studies on our website as well on how customers currently see value from what we're doing. I think if I were to break it down into a few different buckets, of course, number one is there is an element of automation of a task. So from our perspective, by providing the visibility we do and scanning over 10,000 locations an hour, we do a full kind of wall-to-wall check of a site multiple times a day. Of course, you are automating a task, so you are saving kind of time and effort over there. But the fact that we do provide that data in real time means that our customers can act on issues immediately as they happen. So that knock-on effect of an error is no longer there. So for instance, we're hearing a lot that actually the picking has improved a lot, and when customers go and actually retrieve an object, whether it's a pallet or a box, it is where it should be at the right time. So then automatically they kind of make sure that they fulfill that order as soon as possible. So that knock-on effect of an error is no longer there. But I think another kind of big element which touched on best use of space earlier is also how they can kind of coordinate that space utilization better. So when it's an opportunity to consolidate stock, they can actually see that in real time and obviously like make space in the warehouse for new goods to come in. Deciding where to place them is also kind of a very big I think advantage of that AI power visibility. So okay, is this good going to fit where I needed to put it in? Is the location that I want to put it in a prime location so that we ensure for fast movers, obviously they're in the right place to be retrieved as quickly as possible. So I think there's a lot of very practical uses of AI on top of that real-time data that can just help the whole site become much more efficient. I think another kind of big element comes from what we're seeing around audits. So we do help a lot our customers with their financial audits. They no longer have to close warehouses and bring a team of like, 100 people to do that wall-to-wall check. It's because we constantly scan, we can kind of then feed that data back into the WMS and then kind of close that gap to auditors. So yeah, there's a lot of value from constantly what we're hearing from the hundreds of sites that we have developed worldwide. I don't know, was there anything else that I haven't covered there? Or
those are absolutely fantastic points that you made. I don't really have anything to add, but I just wanted to sort of like wrap it up and tie a bow on it a little bit. Is when I see like how we are in any industry and specifically here, like the supervisor or one expert in the warehouse has the best eyes. They know where something sits, even if it's a lost pallet, they probably know. So one way that AI helps and machine learning helps here is like democratizing that intelligence or that expert information or wisdom and spread it across the entire warehouse floor. So when the AI sees it, that expert knowledge is an institutional knowledge has been embedded into the model, and now it's acting as like these hundreds of supervisors, right? So I think that's like a massive value gain that we have from like using machine learning models and the way it can like look at all of those locations right at the same time, and then giving you that opportunity to never lose a pallet again or something, So
And I love what you said there, and I think it's a very, very valid point. I think going practically speaking, a lot of the times, to your point, we do find almost in every single site that we work with, that one person that is pretty much the brain behind or the slotting strategies or kind of the picking strategy. And you would expect that it'd be a lot more kind of machine driven in a way by now, but actually you still kind of have that one person that put it in the first place and they revise it every 6 months or something. So it's exactly what you're saying, is how can you extract that knowledge from somebody's mind and expertise from somebody's mind and do it at scale, exactly. So that you can then see, for instance, like we have customers that now use us across multiple sites, and we can kind of see what works quite well in one geography for one product, and then how can you then take that from that geography, move it to another geography.
Localization,
exactly. Absolutely. And then kind of make sure that they can learn from each other, but without having to kind of think human to human and doing all that training, is instantly train the models to do that.
There's so many machine learning techniques for doing exactly and solving exactly that problem. Like how do you, the behaviors and things that you learned in a particular geographical region or a particular warehouse, how does it adapt and transfer to another one without starting from scratch and then using that learned behavior and then adapting it to this one? So there's a whole area of research and actually practical applications and success stories of using this methodology here. But yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. And I think probably this takes us to the next question, which looks a little bit more at the future. So what do you think, Divya, that AI-enabled warehouses look like within the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I get asked this question on a weekly basis at this point, but there's so much, and 3 to 5 years in the AI world is like an eternity. So we don't really know where we are going to be in 3 to 5 years. But if I were to make a bet and think of like immediately what would the next few years is going to look like, I think we are moving towards more autonomous decision support and like having things. And this actually calling back the adaptive warehouse paper that we published last year, which talks very in depth about these ideas and how we see the warehouses themselves evolving and the intelligence that is collected, the data, and how we are leveraging all of that. But I think things might become more agentic, things might become more adaptive, and we are supporting decision making and automating that as much as possible so that the human beings who have been involved, the experts and the supervisors, can then focus and use their energy in solving problems that AI cannot. And it gets more and more into the territory of just providing support rather than you having to run around the warehouses and like losing your energy doing that. So I think, but it could look far more advanced in the future, but we don't know yet. So yeah, it's fun to watch.
And I think it's exactly that point, like considering the pace that everything is moving at, and even ourselves, like over 2.5 years ago, we barely kind of brought the product to market, and we're starting to learn ourselves what to do, right? So yeah, within 3 to 5 years, it could be a completely different industry. I think from my perspective, again, kind of with that commercial hat on, I think there's an element around even ourselves as Dexory, like we are very, very keen to make sure that we work with proper operations to really understand what else could we be doing, like constantly kind of push a little bit the boundaries and get our customers to think with us around where else can we bring value. Because I think it goes back to like on what we were saying earlier, unless you have a problem and you can try and demonstrate a value, there's going to be a lot of buzz, but what exactly is that going to be the gap kind of bridging there? And there's one thing that I don't know how much, we don't actually talk too much about, I think, even between ourselves yet, which is this massive hype around physical AI at the moment. And I smile at it because I feel like at Dexory, we've always talked about physical AI and using autonomous robots, which was like many years ago, I've seen in the retail sector and then moving into warehouses. So using robots to actually collect data that makes the robots themselves smarter.
Better at their
exactly.
jobs.
And I think kind of and using that data to then train other types of robots that might work within the space
or add more capabilities to the robots.
So I think what's kind of your view on that? Because also from our perspective, we have so much information that we could potentially
So one of the things that come to mind is our pick, face, and block set capabilities, right? Which is like we are collecting data but also the compute and the intelligence to use that data in real time as we collect it and provide insights right there, which is a very hard problem to solve, which makes the core of our physical AI offering right now. But as we grow, I think a lot more of that data and that intelligence is going to sit more and more on the robot, because then we are removing the latency between transferring data, doing it in the cloud, and especially for very time-sensitive insights, which can be solved and be obtained as quickly as we are scanning them and seeing. So the robot goes from like just seeing to knowing, right, and understanding. So that's what physical AI to me means, and we are very much on that trajectory. So I'm very excited about that personally.
Yeah, and I think there's obviously a lot of other players within our ecosystem, let's say, and obviously we cover parts of the use cases that a normal kind of operations team has, but as we were saying, they are picking robots, they're autonomous forklifts that can very much kind of use some of the data that we have to potentially train what they are doing, or even like picking arms to try and understand, to your point, the shapes and size of boxes in real time. Because we're absolutely seeing, going back to the hygiene point, you can train as much as you want in the lab, but in the real world, you will have packaging leftovers, you have like random empty, exactly, too much variance, right? So I think one of the big advantages we have at Dexory is kind of that volume of information we get every single day from real active operations rather than lab data. Could, again, going back to the question around where is this going into 3 to 5 years, is like everyone communicating with each other and using, again, that real-time data to make the whole industry, in my view, better and kind of being able to operate in real-world environments rather than the lab.
Definitely.
Perfect. And I think maybe a final question we can tap on, which is like, what should a warehouse leader do today if they want to adopt AI intelligently? Do you want to start on that?
Sure. I think this basically, again, I'm going to hammer on the data point, but I think being data realists is really important. Like understanding what you're like. Obviously, I mean, we are collecting data. Even WMSs collect data. We collect them for our customers. But then, where does it really sit, and what does your data moat look like? Is it ready for innovation? Is it a robust pipeline for you to collect and like assimilate information and data or not? And then focusing on that and making sure that that foundation is built in the right way before we start adding AI and LLMs and all of that on it would be the right thinking and the right strategy. But yeah,
Perfect. No, I think from my perspective, I think especially with, again, that commercial hat on and the conversations that I'm having with a lot of the users is going back to the point, like, don't necessarily expect miracles, but have a very kind of clear focus on what is it that you're trying to solve. And maybe with that in mind as well is the way that customers procure software at the moment might not work the same for AI and the latest technology, because kind of going through big procurement asks might not kind of be the same for AI tech, because it's not going to meet the same type of requirements on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's a really interesting kind of point to touch on. But I think all in all, thank you so much for the conversation. I'm sure we're going to get some more questions quite soon. We'll definitely kind of address those. And yeah, I think if we get more, we could probably do another one of these.
Absolutely.
Thank you everyone for watching. And yeah, we'll come back to you on the questions.
Thank you.